I'm author and critic David Agranoff. I'm a horror and science fiction author, critic, and researcher. In this podcast, I wanted to provide in-depth interviews and panel discussions with everyone from New York Times bestselling authors to researchers, musicians, and anyone I find interesting. Welcome to Postcards from a Dying World. Hello and welcome to another special episode of Postcards from a Dying World. This is episode 153, unless I change the order, but it shouldn't change. This one is a very hyper-local episode for San Diego. I have a panel of San Diego writers, some of which... I go back far with all of them, but even further, almost 2 decades now with Ryan and Cody. So back to, it's crazy how long we've known each other and been a part of the San Diego writing community. So they have a new book that they are 3/4 of the writing team behind this book from number 16 of the Dark Tide series from Crystal Lake Publishing. And so we're going to talk about this book, PsychoActive. So we're going to get a little spoilery eventually. We'll give a spoiler warning. But at this point, we're going to try to sell you on this book, that you should want to get this book if you don't already have it. The subtitle is Transformative Horror Novellas. But let's start with a little introduction. Let's assume that the people listening don't know who the fuck you are. However... Ryan is the only one. Well, Ryan, no, you've been on we talked about Hissers 3. So we did talk about Hissers 3. So everybody's been here before, but just in case they haven't, this is somebody new. Ryan, tell the folks who you are and how you got into horror in a thumbnail version.
All right. Ryan C. Thomas, I'm probably most known for writing The Summer I Died. I've got a whole bunch of novels out. How did I get into writing horror? I just grew up as a horror kid. I've told this story many times. I'll do it real fast. I went to a daycare as a kid, from like the second grade to 6th grade after school, and the woman who ran the daycare would sit us all down after school and pop in a horror VHS, and that was where my love of horror developed.
Yeah, I don't know if people like regularly say horror daycare as a marketing system, but that would be an
you know what, all the kids loved it though. It was the best. Watching Nightmare on Elm Street in 3rd grade or whatever, it was great.
Cody Goodfellow, why don't you go next? Tell the folks who you are and how you got to this point in your life.
A lot of bad choices, basically. My name's Cody Goodfellow. Written 9 novels and almost as many short story collections and some comics and some short movies and things like that. And I always identified with monsters and sought out horror. I think it was therapeutic for me at a very early age. When you're afraid of everything in the world, somehow it helped me manage that. And the night terrors that used to keep me awake, I realized were bonus horror movies that my brain was making for me. And so it's always, for as long as I've been around, it's kind of defined my world. There wasn't like a single like breakthrough incident. I mean, in 3rd grade, my teacher gave me The Shining to read, but by then, I was pretty much ready for it. I think that I brought everything that I learned into this story that's included in this book, about which more later.
Well, and Anthony and I just had the 10th anniversary of meeting each other, and
what'd you buy me?
I should have gotten you again. But, hey, you could have gotten me again,
man.
I think I gave you
this. I don't see nothing on here, dude.
Yeah. Well, we owe Cody actually because it was an invite to counter protest the evangelicals at Comic-Con for on behalf of Cthulhu. Is where and that was my first Comic-Con back after moving back from Portland. So that's one of the reasons why I remember that it was 10 years, because we just had our 10th anniversary back in San Diego. So Anthony, tell the folks who you are.
Yeah, I'll try. So I'm Anthony Trevino. I'm a writer of weird fiction, comics, scripts, sketch comedy. Uh, kind of to piggyback on what Cody and Ryan were saying. I've also kind of always identified with monsters. If I had to think of like my, horror moment, I would say it's probably the time that my mom and her boyfriend sat me down and let the TV kind of babysit me while they went to bone down and smoke meth. And it was playing Hellraiser, and it's that scene where Frank gets reanimated out of the floorboards, and I've kind of been hooked ever since. I've never really like horror has helped me kind of establish just kind of like my outlook on the world, and I've never really felt like I fit in any one kind of community. So, horror has established this welcoming atmosphere of kind of being for everyone, regardless of, who you are, who you might be. So really what I'm saying is my long-winded way of saying I've always just kind of wanted to be a Cenobite when I grew up. That's it.
Well, and folks who regularly listen to this podcast or watch it on YouTube will remember that Anthony was here for the best movies of the year episode this last year, and from popular demand will probably be back next year if we can schedule it.
For former co-host of the Dickheads podcast too. Yeah.
Yep. And we also wrote a novel together called Nightmare City that you can get out there.
That's true.
And so
facts.
Yeah, we've done things. So this is actually an interesting thing, and we will talk about collaboration a little bit later, because all four of us on this panel have collaborated on novels with other writers, some with each other. And then Cody also worked with John Skip for a while. And have you written with other people too? You did a book with Osborne as well too, Cody, right?
That's right. J. David Osborne and I co-wrote The Snake Handler.
Yeah, great. It's more of a novella, right? Or was it?
It's a short novel. I think it's 30 odd thousand words. It reads like a rape tape. And we wrote it in about a month and a half. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I kind of beat feet and ended up stampeding Dave. Dave's contributions are slightly less than half, but we conceived the thing together and juiced it up together, and so it's totally his and my herbs and spices and strangely sourced meats put together into a chili that neither of us could have done alone.
Right. And I think what's different for the Snake Handler as opposed to, I mean, when you were writing with Skip, this is a guy who you had grown up reading and was a huge influence on you as a part of the Skip Inspector team. And it must have been a different atmosphere working with somebody who's kind of from the same generation. And
oh, absolutely. I mean, at the risk of giving an ill-informed hot take, literary collaborations a lot of times are matters of economic expedience. I mean, look at people are still collaborating with Michael Crichton.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, when James Patterson has a new book and there's another guy on there, or Tom Clancy, for that matter,
yeah,
there'll be a name somewhere down there, and you got to figure the lower name did a lot of the work, and the first guy held open the door, and maybe his contribution might have been about cocktail napkin size, and what you don't often see is actual true collaborative jams in literature, just because it is a solitary medium in its creation and its consumption, which makes it unique and kind of uniquely lonely. And yet authors, I mean, are in so control of so little of their world. The book takes place entirely in your head, and you're just kind of painstakingly pulling it out like a ticker tape, one word at a time, for the reader to assemble it one word at a time. And it's a very intimate, strange experience between writer and reader. And so I don't know that there are a whole lot of writers who do have effectively managed long-term collaborations that are a true collaboration. Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle,
I was
and
just
later
about to, yeah, because I just heard Larry Niven on an interview talk about how much fun he had writing with somebody else. And you could tell from listening to the interview that he didn't see it as like a chore. He saw it as like two buds like hanging out. And
yes, no, the Niven Pournelle streak was as affecting on me growing up as any horror stuff that I read. They had these gigantic high concept books that were big picture things, and they feel like more than one person's viewpoint, which gave it this veracity and this authoritativeness. And that was the kind of thing that Skip and I tried to do, in a very different genre with our collaborations, was figure out what part of the story do you love telling most, and what part of the story do I love telling most. And so we would divide up these things, and it was like the guitar and the bass. And I think created a not quite a kaleidoscopic, but a multi-scope thing, because so often, I mean, you're writing different characters, but it's really hard, or rather, you have to resist the inertia that makes everybody talk in your voice to keep each character's voice unique. And so, since each of us, I mean, I like writing the bad guys. I love writing the bad guys, and he likes writing the good guys. He wants characters that he can root for, and so we had both of those sensibilities going into work in everything that we did, so that I think everybody felt like they had an advocate. It was like a weird kind of people's court of the damned.
right. And collaboration is where we got to start with this book, because it starts off with Ryan and Anthony's novella, which is really a short novel. I mean, it's longer than Of Mice and Men, right? So as an example, and of course thematically similar, right? And I'm just kidding, but I think
Sure.
Collaborating, one of the things that a lot of us who are pretty good at collaborating or like collaborating are people who have experience being in bands, and like, being in a band or playing music, you have to be open to other ideas. You can't just be like, my idea is the one. Now, Ryan, you have a lot of experience playing in bands and stuff. So can you talk about, what playing music, plays a role in how you approach collaboration?
Sure. That's a good analogy, and Cody just brought it up earlier with the bass and guitar thing as well. Yeah, being in a band, we have a saying in the band I'm in now. I think in every band I've ever been in, we've always had a saying, is that you serve the song. Okay, it's not about like the drummer gets a solo, the guitarist gets a solo. Everybody's always got this like ego, they want to shine, but at the end of the day, you have to serve the song. I mean, stepping back, you don't get a solo, or you don't play piano on this one, or it's for the benefit of the end product. And writing is very much like that. And Anthony and I approached it like that. We're gonna do. I'm gonna write this, and you're gonna write this, and at the end of the day, it's all got to work for the betterment of the story. And working with somebody like Anthony, it's super easy because we'll agree on that. Like, well, this would be cool to have, but it doesn't work, so let's get rid of it. Or, oh, you've got a good idea that I didn't think of, which now is going to turn me into spin me this way. I'm going to go off to the right instead of to the left because of your suggestion, and being open and willing to listen to those suggestions and play with them. It is very much like writing a song.
Right. And one of the reasons why Anthony and I ended up like working well together is that I'm a big structure guy, and Anthony likes it kind of writes from an amorphous place a lot of times. And so and so like a lot of times like it would be me setting up structure and then Anthony coming up with these like amazing like scenes that weren't in the plan, right? And so a lot of that is you find these different strengths that you can work with. And I think one of the things that I think makes the Thomas Trevino thing work is Ryan, you're so good at making things viscerally feel, right? Like putting me in the moment. And that's a thing that it's not that Anthony doesn't do that either, but it's just like that's where I see your strength coming, right? And I feel like what I also like about your team up is that I see Anthony a lot of times stretching those muscles for coming up with story, right? And I feel like, yeah, I feel like I saw now, not to, well, I don't know. One of the influences I saw Anthony on this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt a lot of perfect union in this. And that's as an influence. And I feel weird saying that with Cody here, but I know, yeah.
Every moment of the book was just taking place at the Sexagon, maybe.
But Anthony, and I know that this project came to you guys as like Crystal Lake approaching you guys to be in this book. Was it the idea from the beginning to have body horror stories, or how did this project start?
Well, initially, I think Joe had contacted Ryan, and Ryan can kind of speak on this, but it was supposed to be, I think, just me, Ryan, and Cody doing 3 separate stories. And then old man Withers over here went and broke his hip and said, please help. Ryan?
Pretty much. Yeah, Joe contacted me and said, do you want to get some guys and work on a Dark Tide collaboration? And yeah, I was recovering from both hip surgery and hernia surgery and taking a lot of pain medication and everything. And so between that, being home with the kids, trying to get that done, I knew I wasn't going to be able to devote 100% of my time to getting a story done. And I also knew that Anthony and I were on the same wavelength in a lot of different ways. We're both just like goofy 13-year-old boys at heart who want to like, watch some goofy, funny horror that maybe has some cool subtext to it. So I knew he was the guy to help me out. And then from there, it was really just, getting Cody, getting somebody for the third one and figuring out what we wanted to write about. And I think Anthony and I kind of went back and forth a little bit on, well, what should it be? What should we focus on? What are our strengths and what do we both like to read? And that's kind of how we all sort of landed on the body horror. I forget what the term was we had originally, like sleaze fest kind of stuff was, I think, what we were going for. And it sort of just moved over time into a little bit more cerebral body horror oriented material.
Right. And well, and then once you had the idea, like how much or the concept, how much did you throw around individual ideas for Love is a Monstrous Death? Like how long was that process?
Ryan took my C-list idea that I pitched and said, let's go with that one.
And
well, I tell this on we did a different interview and I told it, but I'll tell it again. It's basically as I was recovering and I'm laying in this recliner in my room, in the living room, recovering from all these surgeries, I spent a lot of time just watching like 80s schlock horror movies and just felt like it would be really fun to kind of write something like that. And so that, when Anthony was like, well, sort of a thing, and I was like, sold, let's do it. That sounds fun.
Mm-hmm. So anything from the A and B you want to talk about, Anthony, that
Nope, because those are about to become my next project. So
nope. Got it. Okay. So you chose the C list idea, according to Anthony, and you were off and running. So did you outline together? How did you do the actual like physical writing of this?
So we got together one night, outlined it on Ryan's little whiteboard, took a picture, and then from there we just kind of, I don't know who started. I think I started, yeah. I wrote the first chapter, sent it to Ryan, and then we just kind of pitched it back and forth. And it follows the outline mostly, but there's some stuff in there that kind of only grows from when you look at your first draft and think, well, there's certain connective tissue missing that without is just the rest is not going to make any fucking sense.
Right.
Ryan may have a different opinion.
No, I think that's pretty much how we work. Is we have a sort of a broad outline of how to get from point A to point B, and maybe we've got some notes in the middle of what what high points and low points we have to hit throughout, and then everything else just kind of comes organically as we're doing it, and then we'll send it back and forth, and he'll spark an idea, and maybe I'll run with that, or sometimes he'll notice like, hey, you forgot to do this or something, so he'll go back and fix something or whatever, and we just kind of work together back and forth over email, sending our stuff back and forth, and it's cool to get something from him that I hadn't thought of, and then it's like, oh, I can with that. That's such a cool idea that that's what's so great about collaborating with another good writer, is they really help you come up with original stuff that you wouldn't just have, you wouldn't have thought of before.
Well, and finding that third voice is always fun too, when you like, find the rail where you're simpatico and you're working on those things. Yeah, I know. I love the I've collaborated. I also collaborated with Ed Morris on a novel, and I love like getting in a chapter that you didn't see and you didn't see coming. And we had especially with Ed, I had the experience of where we started to write in each other's voices a little bit, and it's always kind of a fun experience when you're trying to like channel the other writer. I think that's super fun. Did you ever have moments where you were like trying to, Anthony, where you were trying to out Ryan, or Ryan, you were trying to out Anthony?
I think Ryan out Ryan on this one.
Yeah.
with some of the later scenes.
I do put some stuff in there just to see if Anthony's gonna laugh or will say. So yeah, that's a little bit of a challenge to myself, but also I think I know if he laughs, then I feel like, okay, I did it properly. The other good thing, I think the way I write, I'm very action oriented and dialogue heavy, and so it's sort of like I write from the top down, and Anthony's so good about like coming in, like building this base support structure, with background stories and everything. So it's I'll throw just wacky stuff out that's just like, here's the roof and it's falling. What are you gonna do with it? And he'll come in and put a base there. I don't know if that answers the question of out Ryaning myself, but I do try.
Yeah, he knocks a hole in the wall and is like, fix it.
Basically, okay. I'm like, here's some wacky stuff. Go with it.
Okay, I guess I'll make this make sense today. That was a lot of this.
All right, we'll come back to your novella. I want to talk to Cody for a bit about The Secret Eater, as far as
I want to hear about
it. Yeah. And then we'll come back to it when we get to spoilers. Now, Cody, for your process, you were invited to do this body horror thing. It was Ryan who wrote you, right? And said, yeah. And so did you have this piece already in mind or written, or was this one that you came up with when the project came to you?
It was kind of up on blocks in my yard with weeds growing up around it. It wasn't complete. And it was a story that I had written under a chain of very fraught personal circumstances. I don't know how much I want to go into that, but I wrote it. I mean, I've said in other interviews, I was in a very intense and imperiled relationship with this woman who came from Alaska, and I had heard stories about her family. and about the very, very intense conflict that drove her family. She had 6 siblings, and at a time when we were on the edge of breaking up, I went up there and I stayed on this farm for a week during July, and it was a working hay farm, and I worked there and did all the stuff they do. At the time, it wasn't research, but of course, whenever I travel, that's an enormous incentive or incendiary that causes all kinds of stories to pop into your mind, because that's how you interpret new experiences and new feelings, right? And
Yeah, well, this makes a lot of sense to me too, because when I first read this story, because I think of your stories as being very geographically located for Southern California a lot of the times, much in the way, you know, King is kind of geographically in Maine, right? And I'm assuming that your experience living for a few years in Portland will start to affect your writing as well as having that experience. So it's cool to hear. I didn't know about this trip, but it makes a lot of sense to me
I
because
mean, I've
Not to
written it.
derail,
Yeah.
but one of the things I that really got me into Cody's work when I read Silent Weapons and obviously Wasted on the Young, is that so many of your stories do take place in places I grew up,
Right.
which is which has always been so fucking cool. You're like the only guy who really brought like any SD like horror to SD, and I've always been really just stoked about that. There you
There,
go. That's it. Sorry to derail.
oh, nah, no worries. There have been a few. You read Mark C. Clements? He wrote a novel with like killer mutants killing homeless people in the gas lamp. The name escapes me right now. It took me forever to track it down, and it was a catastrophic disappointment. But I clung to it because I'm like, hey, I've been there. And so yeah, no wonder you're such a good, reliable hostage audience. Is yeah, at least yeah, we are suckers for any San Diego shout out.
oh,
Hey, the guy
absolutely.
recorded a special remix of Hot in the City where he yelled San Diego. Actually, no, 91X patched that together, but we felt real for a second. Anyway, uh, yeah, I mean, I've written a ton of Portland stories too, which I don't know if you've come across them anywhere. None of them really have been collected anywhere yet. But it did mark a sea change in my writing, and a huge change in perspective and environment. And it did make me a different kind of writer for a while. And then in leaving it, I was kind of broken by a traumatic breakup and uh, the pandemic lockdown and all these other shared and very private personal traumas, and I was kind of numb. And in that time, I finished a draft of The Secret Eater, which I had talked over with the person that I was living with at the time, and she was very into it. Um, and when I finished it, I sent it to her. I never heard anything back. But of course, I felt very strange about it because it was something that I'd written during this intensely personal thing, and really almost kind of for one person. I mean, beyond for myself. Um, and
Yeah, well,
yet,
and it's impossible to write that kind of horror and have it in that kind of location and not think a little bit about Laird Barron.
sure.
So like
it's
and
it's set in Palmer, Alaska, which is the town he's from. So yes, it was totally. I was totally camping out in Laird's backyard. Uh,
yeah. And I say that with the utmost respect as a huge Laird Barron fan. And I think one of the things I liked about the story is that I kind of like really saw it as kind of an homage to Laird in a sense too. Like I
and not the
definitely,
and
yeah,
not the first one that I'd done. I've written a story called "Of a Thousand Cuts" that appeared in tribute and a Laird Barron tribute anthology.
yeah,
It was set in his Gladiator universe of "The Light is the Darkness," and I was trying to out Laird there. Uh, Here, writing The Secret Eater, I was very aware of Laird's shadow hanging over anything I did with it. I deliberately didn't, read like Swift to Chase, which is a lot of his very Alaskan stories at the time. And usually I'm not kittenish about reading stuff and worrying about how it's going to change or influence what I'm doing. I like to read things that are in the same vein that sound like the kind of thing that I'm attempting at the time, so that I can do opposition research, so that I can pivot and go in a different direction and not unwittingly reinvent the same wheel.
Yeah, Stephen Graham Jones has been very vocal that he does the same thing. Like, before writing, just recently, his most recent Buffalo Hunter, he said he read a bunch of vampire novels before working on it, and I think it's actually smart. But
I think you've got to. I think you've
yeah.
got to just to be aware of the stage that you're stepping onto and what's played there. My instinct is always I don't get sucked into a writer's work anymore. I used to go through periods like that where I was like silly putty. I would kind of just through osmosis just regurgitate things that I was reading. I think I've kind of crystallized my own voice enough that instead I have to go in the other direction. I have to kind of work to force feed my imagination to be more flexible and not just to ossify. But with Secret Eater was completely informed by the place, and I felt like, I mean, it's such a tiresome cliche. I don't know, it's beyond tiresome. It's just the setting. You have people that live in big cities and they always write stories about small towns, whether or not they've ever lived in them, because a small town is a great manageable location with a decent cast, and it kind of serves sort of a surrogate family for whatever ancient evil arises, or or slasher or ancient curse or something like that. And with Secret Eater, I was really struck by the isolation of a small town out on the frontier. It's just an hour outside of Anchorage, but it does feel very much like it. Well, it's a place you could die if you go outside, at the wrong time of year, and it's a place where wild animals could rip you to shreds within shouting distance of your home. You never know. And
so
that
did a lot of the story come to you when you said you were working on the farm? So yeah, so I'm sure you were probably writing most of it in your head while you were.
Oh yeah. No, the farm, it's a hay farm, but I mean, like every place now, it was being preyed upon by lots of invasive species, and there were these festering patches of hogweed, which is this very weird looking Martian invasive kind of a plant, and it secretes a sap that if you get it on your skin, it can permanently damage your skin, so that you get blisters from touching it. And then that part of your skin is so photosensitive that it's like it just crisps in direct sunlight. You're pretty much always going to have to wear gloves if you get this shit on you. And so, yeah, of course, I started wondering, what would that taste like? I'll bet you could make some pretty gnarly wine out of it. And so that was kind of just one more seed that fell into the hopper at that time. And it seemed like a way of offering not a horrible evil that preys on them, but perhaps a source for their deliverance. Because I looked at the people that live, and if not then survive, if not thrive, uh, out on these edges of civilization, and they need the isolation and they need the frontier. And in a small town, um, of course, you can only get by minding your own business, and that kind of iron sense of independence and embracing isolation is kind of the hallmark of a place like that. So I started, of course, to wonder, what kind of attributes thrive in that environment. And it seemed like the kind of place where something like aphantasia, where it's the inability to have a visual imagination, to picture anything in your head, would kind of be a useful adaptation, because you could kind of go crazy feeling like you're out on the edge of civilization, and fighting to carve out a living, and seeing the same faces every day. And it seemed like a it was a kind of place that was ripe for but would totally resist a psychedelic awakening, um, because it's a small place where everybody is kind of by necessity living together, but it feels like everybody for one reason or another needs to be alone, needs to feel alone, or the at least in public, and you do things to deal with that. And so this substance that this family ends up distilling out of this weird rogue hogweed that sprouts up on their family farm after their father, a domineering farmer, passes away. Uh, it spreads like wildfire as this kind of new moonshine, but what it offers are these dreams that fulfill kind of a fantasy of people who take psychedelics, is that it opens up or imbues the mind with powers that it didn't have, that you can actually read people's minds. um and I thought, to the right community, something like that would seem like a wonderful gift. You could take this thing together and you could share your experiences and your feelings, and you need not ever feel alone. uh, but to people like that who live with a lot of secrets, live with a private life that they have to kind of keep on the down low, it can be a painful awakening. And maybe the worst nightmare come true is not being able to have secrets from other people, and knowing what everybody else thinks about you, and knowing what everybody else's secret fantasies are. That can be ripping off a very scabby band-aid. Um, and so that was the kind of thing that I was tackling, is what if these people were confronted with a way to actually connect with each other? um, and they resist it. Some resist it violently, but then it begins to reshape the community into the kind of people that can and would welcome becoming something closer to a hive mind.
Well, it's a fantastic story. It's one that I had a feeling had been kind of cooking or in the hopper beforehand.
I was going to, I had an idea for a story that I really wanted to do when I got the initial contact from Ryan, and then I asked, "So what are you guys doing?" And he told me about it. And at least in terms of the setting and kind of what happens, it sounded close enough to what I had been planning to do. And so yeah, I turned around. I'm like, well, I got this thing on the back burner, and I took it out and revised and expanded it. But yeah, I was going to do something, at least kind of a trauma knockoff of High Rise. Um, and so I'm glad I didn't. It's nice to have some variety. And so when these guys asked, just to a shout out to the dude, when we had once I was brought on board, he asked if I knew anybody else. In my mind, considering the subject matter, instantly went to Ed Kurtz, who's
you read my mind with the next question. So
yeah, fantastic, and
I'm not very familiar with Ed's work, so I was excited to read it. But can you give me a scoop on?
He's a pulp journeyman. He's written some westerns, really cool westerns, and some sleaze horror. Uh, Not a whole lot of things, and it seems like he lives a kind of really difficult and turbulent life, and makes it hard for him to create steadily. Right around the time that he turned in his story, he deleted all of his social media accounts, and kind of retreated, and people were asking what the hell happened to Ed. And I reached out to him via email, and he was going through a really tough time. But he and his gal are still together, and working things out, and hopefully will come back as a creative, or at least find some peace. But Ed's story kind of hits with like the same kind of intensity of like early John Shirley, to me, or like Kathy Koja back in the Mean Abyss days, in that he's able to talk about kind of pain and degradation. And I mean, we're talking about like these things is all body horror stories, but that's not really the connective tissue. The connective tissue. I mean, more than just sleaze, because sleaze is kind of a tone. I tried to kind of take. I wrote a very sleazy story, but I tried to take it very seriously. Writing first person POV of one of the siblings that has promulgated this psychedelic poison on their town. And so it's kind of like her journal. But I think we were also looking at, controlled substances or exterior things as agents to change our minds, and our bodies, essentially are metaphors for our minds, with things like Cronenberg's films. It's an external, everything that happens in a Cronenberg film that doesn't seem to make sense totally makes sense if you look at it as just the body is an expression of the mind. And when the mind is diseased, or when the mind is sick, or when the mind is trying to expel something, it writes itself upon the body. And so this relationship between the mind body, when something that we feel we need, something that's going to destroy us, and yet we need it, because we need to change. We are not, our way of living isn't sustainable. I think that was the, more evanescent kind of connective tissue between all our stories, and Ed delivered exactly the kind of thing that I thought it needed on balance, to all of us San Diego fuckers.
Well, and I think Ed's story has a very interesting central character too, and it is it takes place in a kind of subculture world that makes for an interesting cosmic horror story that it is a fine piece of work, and so it really ties the room together and makes for like 3 novellas that are all worth getting that they're all different, but work well together. So that being said, before we get into spoilers, is there anything we need to know about getting this book or finding it? We want people to go out and check this out. Before we get into spoilers, this is a good time for people, if you have not read PsychoActive, you can pause this podcast, go buy it. Just, I'm sure Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, that kind of thing. Yeah, and come back, and then we'll get into like the kind of under the hood stuff. And we're not going to do a ton of under the hood stuff, but we'll see how the conversation rolls. Starting with Love is a Monstrous Death. Now we're in spoilers, so we can kind of, how did you feel about that description as kind of a high-rise done trauma style? Because I thought that was a pretty good description of it.
Yeah, no, that's actually really good. I was pitching it all week at Comic-Con is trauma knockoff of Crossed. So the high rise is great.
Yeah, and I think the apartment building setting. Now, here's the funny thing: was I had a hard time placing this building. Is it in a city? Is it not? I was more thinking of the building like kind of almost like an outpost. I know that sounds really weird, but I was kind of just like, I didn't really think of much outside of what was going on in the actual building. And in a weird way, I thought of, PKD's Maze of Death with the building that they kind of happen upon. Like, I started to imagine people looking out the window of this building and seeing nothing. I know that's a very strange thing to think, but the building itself became like almost like a trap in my mind while I was reading it. So tell me about creating this building and what you guys thought about it. How did you talk about it as a team?
Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, Anthony, go. I think the building just sort of developed over time. We came up with a fake town, and we stuck it sort of on the outskirts of the town across from this strip mall, so that it is purposefully secluded, because of the spoilers that we can get into about it, about who is initially selected to, essentially who they will rent to and why they will rent to certain people had a lot to do with where the building is placed in the world. It's purposefully sort of removed from not so much civilization. It's like if it was in Ramona,
Well, it also reminded me of, I don't know if you guys ever read Richard Matheson's short story where the apartment building's a spaceship. It's from the 50s. Yeah. And they kind of rent to people that they want to abduct, and like slowly everybody figures out like that there's an engine room in the basement of the apartment building. And God, what was the name of that story, Cody? Do you remember the name of that one? The Matheson story? No? Okay. What's funny is I listened to that Matheson story on audiobook like the week after I read Psychoactive. So I kind of saw some similar themes, unconscious
there's
themes.
definitely some parallels. I haven't read that Matheson story, but that sounds like there's some parallels for sure.
Yeah, so what I liked is that the building itself was kind of like a setup for kind of recruiting these people to be into this situation.
Yeah.
And the Sunshine Spires, like the name made me laugh actually a little bit. And but what I like too is that this Valentine's Day party that like I kind of imagined the party like having like or kind of pissing off some of the people that lived in the building and then attracting some of the people. Can you talk about the just like you know where the story, like how you saw it kind of unfolding with the concept, as far as like why was the Valentine's Day party so important to it?
Take it, Anthony.
Here, I'll explain your idea. Sure. Go ahead, dude.
No. I mean, you wrote the first chapter that introduces it all. So
I wanted to we needed a way for the building management to get everybody in the same room, and I think what really worked nicely is I really like kind of in My Bloody Valentine, Valentine's Day kind of like permeates the entire storyline. So I like movies, I like books that kind of feel built out from this like weird kind of this weird holiday. And so I tried to set it as close to the Valentine's Day party as we could without actually showing the party. And so yeah, I just it also kind of fits within the thing. So originally I don't think it's really a spoiler, but like the original title was Lust is a Monstrous Death because there's so much sleazy like obsessive fucking in the book. But somebody on the call here he vetoed me calling it that for various marketing reasons.
It was a suggestion. I didn't. I thought it would be better to go a different route because of the because lust implies already we're gonna get sleazy.
Lust is
Ain't nobody in love in this.
Lust.
What?
Yeah, but you can think you are. But
yeah,
lust,
my feeling was this.
it's also a pain in the ass word to say to put at the beginning of a title. Lust is a monster.
I love that.
Yeah. Love at least flows off. That's why it's so popular. It works so well. That's why there's so many poems about it. It's just easy to say.
All right.
Listen, it's a marketable word and it speaks towards a larger set of emotion that can be corrupted.
But the whole point of the Valentine's Day party too is that the chemicals that the government contractors are pumping in through the building are meant to like quell everybody into this like really kind, very kind of hippie-ish, love your neighbor state. And so the Valentine's Day party kind of acts as like a nice little catalyst to get everybody like in a good mood, which unfortunately is not how things pan out for the characters in the book.
And I think that's the great duality of that opening chapter that Anthony wrote is he's just come from the Valentine's Day party where everyone is supposed to be getting along and finding love amongst each other, and he's mad. It pissed him off more or less.
Yeah, so I just picked a random page to give an example of where I thought we were pushing the boundaries. So now, I know, Anthony, when I pointed out the simile of the octogenarian fart simile, that you threw Ryan under the bus for coming up with that one. But
I didn't throw him under the bus. I just think he should credit where it's due, man. I didn't write that.
Yeah. So how about something ripped off his mask and Ron's head was turned toward the gray and white vaginal chasm that had ballooned to the size of a soccer ball. On the same page, we also have the sight of the hallway gave over to blackness as he passed completely into the vaginal cavity. And then there's a monster cock also on this page. And I see Anthony has muted himself, so he wants Father of the Year Ryan Thomas to explain himself.
Oh, I totally wrote
Father of the Year.
I when I wrote that scene, I was really thinking I want to make Anthony either laugh or shake his head and with so much disappointment in me. Either one was a win for me. It's really where it stemmed from, was let me just go so over the top with this ridiculous story that I either have he either has a better understanding of me or he never wants to hang out with me again. We'll see which way it goes.
Wow. So you're recovering from a lifetime of gratuitous pelvic thrusting. Your Mark voucher.
I might be a little focused on pelvises too, since I years recovering from a broken one, really,
There you go.
Well,
context is important.
I can say that I came away from that scene with the biggest thing on my mind was Ryan, he's not wearing his gas mask when he goes into the vagina, and he was wearing the gas mask before you put him in the vagina, and that is an issue.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about.
Cody gets it.
I will knock the hole in the wall and Anthony comes in and fixes it.
Well, at least you were paying attention to the details there, Anthony. Like instead of being lost in the vaginal cavity, as it were. There, There. This is definitely taking the sleaze factor and dialing it to 11. This one definitely goes to 11. So, on that note, I think people will enjoy that. But we're in spoilers now, so now at any point, Anthony, did you feel like you wanted to outdo that, or were you just like, okay, that's enough?
I don't think I ever sat down and said, okay, that's enough. Like, I'm not a prude when it comes down to it. I just want things to make sense. So no matter how grotesque or kind of insanely gratuitous that Ryan got, if it fits thematically and with the story, I was down to make it work.
Right.
Except, I mean, there is the later scene where a guy kills himself by sucking his own dick. Cody's face.
It's like what I sounded. Well, you did I really enjoyed the chapter in the basement with Carol. That was all you. So that was another good sort of over the top.
Would that be the rancid fuck juice in chapter 23, or am I
David? Chapter 23, my highlight says rancid fuck juice. Was that you or Ryan? Please go ahead. It was me.
No, that was the scene where they go down into the basement and they find the woman. She's like a whole separate experiment that they're working on down there. And they beat her with her own leg, or I'm trying to remember now.
This one is definitely the trauma high rise. I definitely think you guys pulled it off. Is there anything in a spoiler sense, what we're talking about from a spoiler angle, in this novella that each of you, starting with Ryan, that you're particularly proud of, like coming out of it, that you hope people catch on to, whether it's something grotesque, something, or just cool, or just, you know, it doesn't have to be a gross moment. We've gone through that.
Yeah. No, I'm just really proud of it, all said and done, being what I hope is a fun, quick read with a little bit of body autonomy subtext in there. I mean, really, at the end of the day, this was about mind control. Like Cody said, this is really sort of a mind control story. The mind control organisms just happen to also alter your body at the same time. So I think there's something to get out of it, and I just wanted something that was going to be, you know, something that was fun that people would want to tell their friends about.
Yeah, and to have something that is as gross as it is, that has a subtext, is always a good thing. So like if you can do both, where you know the sleight of hand is you know, the rancid fuck juice simile might, like, you know, be the sugar coating that helps the subtext go down, right? Anthony, is there something in particular you're very proud of with the story, and then we'll get into Secret Eater?
I'm fairly proud of that first chapter. That first opening chapter, I think, really sets the tone for the entirety of the book. Um, you know,
On
I
a
think it's
pure
some of
writing
my.
level, I think you guys did an amazing job of introducing all the characters. So
Oh,
that's
thank you.
yeah.
There's a lot of dialogue in there that I'm pretty proud of. Um, and hopefully I was able to kind of take Ryan's idea of let's have a gratuitous horror gangbang and give it a little bit more of like a serious tone approach to the writing itself.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like you can look at it, you can say this novella is you know, a big giant, like gross, disgusting gangbang, but it does have that mind control story. So, you know, that is part of it. And speaking of somebody who's watched your you were always good at writing dialogue, Anthony, but your dialogue
Thank you.
has gotten even better. And I can pick up on bits, like there were parts where like I knew an Anthony dialogue scene, just because unlike anybody else reading it, I have enough under the hood time with your writing to recognize some of it. On that note, Secret Eater, on a spoiler level, Cody, now that we can talk about it, assuming that people have read this far, um, you know, what's something that you feel like you're really proud of coming out of this story? What's the imagery or the thing or the moment from this story that you're really proud of?
I was trying to do kind of a body horror story or a folk horror story and create, kind of a legendary creature, or a cryptid kind of a thing out of whole cloth. And just based on my experiences on this farm, and what I would hope resonates in it is the nature of the Long Mama, who is this entity that lives and takes up the entire valley that this farm is located in, and the hogweed is actually, her hair, um, and it's the fruit by which the people can reconnect with the land and with each other. And I would hope that in presenting this kind of a story, I was trying to kind of uh, do the exact opposite of what like traditional cosmic horror does, where it posits this horrible thing, this horrible transformation. And this is something that the new Weird has been doing. Various writers working under that applied umbrella, but to re-inject a sense of wonder, um, Perhaps the way that these cosmic forces or outside entities are going to change us will be better. That we've seen almost 180-degree transformation, but not really. I mean, if you read Shadow over Innsmouth, the author is haunted and hunted by these frog fish monstrosities, and the crowning horror is that he discovers it's okay to spoil Shadow over Innsmouth, right? I mean,
yeah, I think at this point, yeah,
that he discovers his secret, suppressed lineage, and that he's one of them, and that in his immediate future he's going to devolve and return to the ocean. And by the end of it, he finds not only acceptance but a kind of poetic beauty in it that was completely absent from the very just mechanical descriptive process, and then the hysterical process when he or voice when he was being chased. And I feel like I tried to find a different way of doing that, and kind of applying what we hope to find in latter day Cthulhu mythos stories, and so seldom find. I mean, people are always accusing each other of doing pastiche, and yet everybody's stories are based on Lovecraft stories and kind of ignoring each other's. And there's a sort of stovepipe thing. Not that this is a Lovecraftian story by any stretch, but it does share some of those common elements.
Well, no, a thing that I felt when I was reading Secret Eater was that this experience or of consuming this stuff, like kind of like transforms everyone and pulls them into thing. It kind of reminded me, it's not a similar story or setup, but it kind of reminded me of, in that moment I had kind of a flash of in the city in the hills, like Clive Barker, as well too, like this kind of hideous bringing together of
right. And in the Hills the Cities was a core influence on a Perfect Union, and which I tried to just make plain with the cover art that Alan Clark did for its first issue, which is a kind of the reference image that I sent him was the cover of Hobbes' Leviathan, which is the figure of this gigantic behemoth that's made up of tiny little people, and I think must have served as a touchstone for Barker in the first place, because it's taking that metaphor to its logical extreme, and therein you see the terror, but also the joy in being connected with all of these people and sharing a thing and becoming this great big thing that can pull the moon down out of the sky. Look
but
what we
and in this case I understand that it's the dreams, right? It's the dreams that connect them, but
it's also a nightmare for some people. I mean, that's what Perfect Union was about, is that for some people this level of connectivity would seem like a paradise. For others it would be hell.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I could never live in a small town is I like to be anonymous. I don't like to everyone to know who I am when I'm going into the store, right? Sure. And I think that kind of nightmare scenario of connecting everyone in this, also in a place where you can't escape. So like one of the things that's horrible about dreams is a lot of times when you're having dreams, you know what's about to happen in the dream, but you can't stop it, right? Because the dream's kind of on.
Right. And what if you've never dreamt before? What if you have no visual imagination whatsoever and you're perfectly satisfied with that? And then suddenly you drink this drink and you start having dreams, but they're not yours. They're your neighbor's dreams. They're your neighbor's fantasies. They're the guy down the street and his fantasy is about you. Those kinds of things could suddenly break us down. It's like it renders everybody naked. There's a dream sequence in the story where the narrator is lured out of her house naked on a hot summer night when mysteriously the sun has gone down, because in summer in Alaska it makes for the shittiest 4th of July you've ever seen. It's like 11 p.m. and you can see smoke and hear bangs, but you can't see anything because it looks like it's about 5:30. But she goes outside and she finds everybody else in the town coming out into the streets naked. They're all converging on this one mountain, and climbing up the mountain together. And some of them lay down together in the grass on the side of the trail, and hogweed flowers sprout out of them. And some of them are lifted off on the wind. Some of us are born to take root. I'm forever reminded of a statement from Brian Carr, when he said repeatedly in a performance of one of his stories at BizarroCon, if you stay in the place that you're from, you're condemned to repeat yourself. And I think artists are most driven to go travel or to resettle someplace else because home's not so good. Home can be really confining, but for some people, the thought of anything else is equally terrifying. And that's what should make us thrive as a species, is that variety of perspective. But when we turn against each other, it can seem like a fundamental cause for war.
Yeah. And I really hate the term. Well, I mean, I use it sometimes, but I'm not a huge fan of the term elevated horror. But one of the things that I like about like the balance that happens in this book is that these dudes wrote a very unelevated horror on the surface. You can see the subtext, it's there, but what's awesome about that is that it's the trick, right? Like the elevation is hidden under this thing, but yours is very on the surface, like a very like kind of high class horror story. And like I think that the difference in the tone makes for like a cool balance for the book. And then Ed Kurtz's story is kind of somewhat in between because it does have the sleazy setup of the strip clubs and all that stuff. And I think like as a package, it makes the whole book like a really cool collection of novellas. I haven't read other ones. I know this is book 16, right, in the series. So I'm going to have to investigate what other combination of authors that they've had, but
it's a pretty amazing cast. I was looking at when I was looking at and considering who else we should invite to round out this lineup. I looked at the lineup so far, and it was kind of daunting. A lot of great folks, and exploring a wealth of cool topics. And I think it's great because people and they gravitate towards theme anthologies. You want to, if you like a particular thing, yes, I just want my chocolate and my cheese, just pile it up. But you can get tired of it, and novellas are the perfect way to explore that. Explore a story that's full, and you get the full experience and the full ideas without it being padded out into something it takes a week to get through, or a whole bunch of stories hitting on the same theme where it becomes monotonous and you start to, I hate cheese and therefore I hate myself, for I am made it.
Well, and I and I'm really excited to see, and I'm proud that I have a story in this Hope Hodgson tribute anthology, but I'm really excited to see how writers like tried to come up with different things, because there's only a couple stories that really define Hodgson's influence. So I'm a little worried to see.
He had a huge body of work, but yeah, there's so few that people really know. I would have loved to do something for that, but I mean, it boats the Glencarrig or Nightland and stuff. But I mean, I would have loved to write something based on that moment in his life when he came closer than anybody else did to breaking Houdini.
Yeah.
I always thought that would have made for a fantastic stage play, or at least the seed for a story.
Yeah, I wonder if anybody like caught on to that. But yeah, I'm excited to see. James has told me that he was consistently amazed at the stories that he got, and that he wasn't sure that he was gonna have enough to begin with. And long after my story got accepted, he was telling me, I'm not sure if we're gonna have enough to do a book. And then a lot of stuff came in, and that was really cool. But yeah, so I really appreciate you guys giving me some time to talk about this book, and Anthony for giving me a copy. you know, as your friends, I'm proud of you guys for knocking it out of the park with this book. And what I really like about both the stories that you three contributed is they're ones that stuck with me, and I thought about them long afterwards. And I know I read this a little bit ago, and we weren't able to put the interview together right away. And sometimes I would be worried that I wouldn't be able to hold on to the stories in my mind for a while, and they stuck around, and that was as good an indication that this is a book for people to run out and get. Of course, we're here at the spoiler portion. Now, the folks that are here, they're with you. They've read your work. They dig it. So they're the ones that really want to know what you're working on next individually. So starting with Ryan, do you have anything you're working on at the moment? Besides, I know you're doing a lot of dad rock.
Yeah. Tons of dad rock. Yeah, I just finished the first draft for the fourth book in the Roger Huntington series. That's The Summer I Died Part 4, essentially. My goal is to have it out hopefully by Halloween. See if I get there. Other than that, I've just got some other short stories and stuff that are kind of sitting in the hard drive that need to be finished. But you can always, anyone interested can go to my website, ryancthomas.com, and just check out what I'm doing.
Now, this is your first time, like after doing a couple books with Anthony, going back and doing one by yourself. Was it a different experience writing this one after doing a couple collaborations?
It was, yeah, it was weird. Because I think the last two projects I did were with Anthony, and we did a Hallmark script together. So 3 projects in a row with Anthony. So having to go back, it was almost kind of strange to go back and find my own voice again. Because when you are writing with someone, you do sort of work within their voice a little bit at times. But
you can always dig out those old ranching coasts to find yourself.
Yeah, right. That's right. Cody used to write at the magazine with me too. So it was interesting to go back and find my voice, and I'll be honest, it was a little bit of a struggle at first to be like, oh yeah, this is how I write, but also this is how the character of Roger talks. So I had to go back and read my old books basically to remember how I did it, if that makes sense. So
I think, well, I just recently read about how Stephen King rereading Cujo to work on rattlesnakes. Like that. Before he did that, he had to, I mean, he's Stephen King and he still had to do that, right? So, Anthony, what are you working on?
I've been writing a lot of sketch comedy to shoot with my comedy partner. So it's been a lot of that. I have been working on something to send to Sam at Weird Punk for way too fucking long, so I need to finish that up. Other than that, just kind of tinkering with a bunch of other shit that'll probably see the light of day 2030. I don't know. I'm slow,
You
guys.
wrote a science fiction novella years ago that I loved that I know you still are sitting on, but whatever.
It's fine. It needs a rewrite. Yeah, I mean, I'm a slow writer when it's just me, and I am, we'll see what happens.
And Cody, I know what's next because I've got this, but with
yeah.
fantastic artwork from Mike Dubish.
Oh yeah,
tell the folks what it is.
Yeah, my 10th novel, New Tomorrow, is expected out a little later this year, October, if we're being optimistic, with cover art and interior illustrations by Mike Dubish, is coming out from Oddness Press. Really excited about that. It's a project I've been laboring over off and on for about 15 years.
I think about 15 years ago, I recorded an interview with you at BizarroCon that when it was on Dread Media, where we talked about this one. So,
yeah, it was one I did not know how to write. at the time when I had the idea, and started it and put it aside, did a ton of research and really absorbed it. And it took a long time, and it was the first thing that I finished after Secret Eater, actually. And it was strange because I think the at the beginning of the book, it's a very grandiose, epic, like George R. R. Martin size thing. Um, and I got through almost half of the book kind of like that, and it's an homage to pulp. It is like pulp and dime store novel characters, kind of modeled on, the Shadow, and they at that time, I my brain kind of broke, and what brought me back was reading old, Shadow and Doc Savage novels and things like that, and realizing how brutally economical they are, and how the power of pulp to grab anybody's imagination and grab them by the short hairs right away and viscerally involve them in a story, and that's what it had been missing. And I think the second half of the book, and I had to kind of go back and kind of adjust the pacing for the earlier part of it. I wrote it like a pulp novel, write it hard and put it away wet. And I hope that's what comes across. And that it'll be something both grand and huge in the first book in a trilogy, but also something that reads fast, and every chapter leaves you kind of excited to read the next one and find out just what happens next. Because I think that's something, for me at least personally, reading had started to feel like work, and I kind of lost touch with that joy that should keep you from turning pages. And I realize when I look at the handful of reviews that each of my books has gotten on Amazon, people say things that kill that excitement for other people. This is a thinking man's horror novel. And it's paradox. It's something that's so intellectually engaging. People should look for something where I just want to turn my brain off and read a novel where flashing happens.
Yeah.
And trying to find new ways to grab people, because they're going past a lot more compelling interactive entertainment that does most of the work for their imaginations to read something. And so
you've written some purely fun shit too, like Repo Shark. I mean, come on.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, dude, and Scum of the Earth rips.
Scum of the Earth rips too. Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of something that does the pulp thing and does it in a absolutely pure way.
Well, thank you. You honor me, and I like to think that these books have proven how few other people really are into pulp.
On that note, folks can find you wherever they need to, basically, but mostly I know
you're locked out of my Facebook page because Facebook is an asshole.
How'd you end up in meta jail?
Yeah, I have no idea why. It says that my account is disabled because of an Instagram account that I've never heard of violated their policies, and yet I can get onto and post on Instagram, but I don't wanna. But it's really weird, and I don't know if my account's being hacked. And I've heard from at least one of my friends on Facebook that my account unfriended them. So yeah,
so you didn't mean to transfer that money from the Nigerian bank account, right?
Oh no, that was
okay. All right.
I
already did it. So
I swindled it out of North Korea fair and square. All right, yeah.
No. Yeah, I already sent the money to the
Nigerian prank call.
Yeah.
This is I clicked on the AI companion at the beginning of this conversation. It wasn't me. It's fake news, everybody. All right. So yeah.
On that note, we are also sometimes to be found at events in San Diego, and we have I'm going to try very hard to get these guys to come out and sell books at the Verbatim Book Fair. So coming up. So in October. So at least I'm pretty sure I can get Cody to go anyways.
Yeah, I'll come down.
Yeah.
I'll come down.
So on that note, folks can find us. And the next episode in this here podcast will most likely be the Science Fiction Hall of Fame episode on The Huddling Place by Clifford D. Samak. And my guests will be Joachim Boaz, the Science Fiction Ruminations blogger, and Greg Mullen of Artifact Books and Encinitas. So Greg is somebody I've been meaning to have on the podcast for a long time, so I'm excited to have him on to talk about Samak's 1940s classic, The Huddling Place. So, and then also, we are going to be doing Mimsy with Cora Bullard and JP from India. So that should be a really good episode of the Science Fiction Hall of Fame podcast series, which is coming up. So I'm trying to get caught up on those episodes. So Science Fiction Hall of Fame is back on track. And in the near future, we'll also be doing another episode on one coming up on Henry Kuttner. So keep your eye out for that. And folks, thanks for joining us by PsychoActive, and find these guys and read their work outside of that book. And that's it. So I'm so terrible at ending. That's the part I am really bad at on podcasts. So see you folks later.